The stars were silent witnesses as the Earth interstellar vessel Defiance drifted through the uncharted region of space. Captain John Miller stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness beyond the view screen. This was supposed to be a routine mission, another step in humanity's careful exploration beyond their solar system. But something felt different today. "Captain, I'm picking up unusual energy readings," said Lieutenant Frank Dawson, his fingers moving quickly across the sensor controls. "Nothing like we've seen before." Miller walked over to the sensor station, his interest piqued. "Natural phenomenon?" "No, sir, the pattern is too regular, too artificial." Miller nodded and turned to his communications officer. "Elizabeth, send a message back to Earth Command. Let them know we're investigating an anomaly." Elizabeth Wilson, a woman with 20 years of space experience etched into the lines around her eyes, nodded and began the transmission. "It'll take about 8 hours for them to receive it, Captain." "That's fine." Miller returned to his command chair and pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We're changing course to investigate unusual energy signatures. This could be nothing, but stay alert. This is what we're out here for." The Defiance adjusted its trajectory, its advanced engines propelling the ship toward the source of the mysterious energy. Miller felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. In the 5 years since humanity had developed their first faster-than-light drive, they had yet to encounter any sign of intelligent alien life. Most scientific minds on Earth believed they were alone in the galaxy, despite the mathematical improbability. "Captain, we're approaching the source," Dawson reported 3 hours later. "And, sir, you need to see this." The main view screen shifted, and the breath caught in Miller's throat. Against the blackness of space floated structures that were unmistakably ships, 5 of them, arranged in a patrol formation. Their designs were unlike anything humans had conceived, with sweeping, organic curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal. "Are they alive?" whispered Elizabeth. Miller couldn't answer. He was too stunned by what they were seeing. "They're scanning us," said Dawson, his voice tense. "Intense energy sweeps. They definitely know we're here." "Open all frequencies," Miller ordered, regaining his composure. "This is Captain John Miller of the Earth interstellar vessel Defiance. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly contact." The bridge crew waited, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Then, without warning, the alien ships moved, their formation tightening as they surrounded the Defiance. "Sir, they're powering up weapon systems." Samantha Reed, the tactical officer, called out from her station. "Energy levels rising fast." Miller's mind raced. "Raise shields, but do not, I repeat, do not charge weapons." The first blast hit before the shields were fully engaged. The Defiance shuddered violently, throwing crew members against their stations. "Shields holding at 87%, Reed reported, her fingers flying over her console. "They're preparing to fire again." Miller gripped the arms of his chair. "Return fire. Defensive pattern only. Target their weapon systems if you can identify them." Reed didn't hesitate. The Defiance's advanced laser array fired, precisely hitting one of the alien vessels. To everyone's surprise, the alien ship's outer hull absorbed the blast, then cracked like an eggshell. "Their hull integrity is failing," Reed said, sounding confused. "Our standard defensive lasers shouldn't have done that much damage." Another volley from the aliens rocked the ship, but the shields held. "They're communicating with each other," Elizabeth reported. "I can't understand the language, but the transmissions increased dramatically after we returned fire." The alien ships began to withdraw, maintaining a defensive posture but clearly reassessing the situation. "They didn't expect us to be able to hurt them," Miller said, watching the alien retreat. "They thought we were primitive." The next few hours passed in tense silence. The alien vessels kept their distance but didn't leave. The Defiance's crew worked frantically to analyze every bit of data they could gather about the unexpected first contact. Dr. Ben Harris, the ship's science officer, entered the bridge with a tablet in his hand. "Captain, you need to see this. We've been running comparisons on their technology based on the scan data." Miller looked at the charts Harris presented. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" Their drive signatures suggest they're using a propulsion system similar to our early prototypes. Technology. We abandoned 5 years ago because we found more efficient methods, but their weapons are far more advanced than ours. So they're ahead in some ways, behind in others? Harris nodded. It's as if they developed along a completely different technological path. But here's the really interesting part. Their ships show signs of extreme age. The materials have atomic decay patterns that suggest they've been in space for centuries, possibly longer. The implications sent a chill down Miller's spine. You're saying we've encountered an ancient alien civilization? That's exactly what I'm saying, Captain. A sudden alert sounded from the tactical station. Captain, they're moving again, Reed called out. 3 ships are maintaining position, but 2 are leaving, accelerating to faster-than-light speeds. They're reporting back, Miller said grimly. Whatever we've encountered here, it's part of something bigger. Miller made his decision. Set course for Earth, maximum speed. We need to report this immediately. Sir? Questioned Reed. Shouldn't we try to establish communication first? They fired on us without provocation, Lieutenant. I think their intentions are clear. We need to warn Earth before they return with reinforcements. As the Defiance prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, they received their first direct communication from the alien vessels. The view screen filled with the image of a being unlike anything they had imagined. It had grayish-blue skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and no visible mouth. When it spoke, the sound seemed to come from somewhere in its chest. The language was incomprehensible, but the tone was unmistakable. A warning. Record everything, Miller ordered. And get us out of here. The Defiance jumped away, leaving the alien patrol behind. As the stars streaked past the view screen, Miller knew that humanity had just taken its first step onto a much larger and potentially more dangerous galactic stage. How long until we reach Earth? He asked. 17 hours at current speed. His navigator responded. Miller nodded. I want full reports from all departments in 3 hours. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. As the crew dispersed to their duties, Miller remained on the bridge staring at the flowing stars. In just a few hours, everything had changed. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and based on their first encounter, they might already be at war. Little did Miller know that back at the encounter site, the alien commander was sending urgent messages throughout its vast empire, reporting the unexpected appearance of a species that should not have developed faster-than-light travel for at least another 500 years. A species whose defensive capabilities had damaged an imperial vessel with disturbing ease. Across the stars, in the heart of a civilization spanning thousands of worlds, an ancient emperor received the news with growing concern. The humans had arrived far too early. The carefully laid plans of the Xandarian Galactic Empire would need to be accelerated. 6 months had passed since the Defiance returned to Earth with news of the alien encounter. The recording of the 4-eyed being had been analyzed by every expert on the planet, but no one could decipher the alien language. One thing was clear, to everyone, the message was not friendly. Earth had changed in those 6 months. The nations of the world, for once united by a common potential threat, poured resources into space defense. Old military bases reopened. Weapons factories operated, day and night. Young men and women lined up at recruitment centers, eager to protect their world from possible invasion. Admiral William Barnes stood at the window of his Pentagon office, watching the rain fall on Washington, D.C. At 62, Barnes had spent his life preparing for wars that never came. Now, facing an enemy from beyond the stars, he felt strangely calm. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called. Lisa Carter walked in, carrying a tablet. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer, she had been trying unsuccessfully to establish peaceful contact with the aliens since first learning of their existence. "Any luck?" Barnes asked, already knowing the answer. Lisa shook her head. "We've been broadcasting on all frequencies using every mathematical and linguistic pattern we can think of. Either they can't understand us, or they don't want to talk." Barnes nodded. The president wants an update on our defense preparations. I was hoping to give him something positive about diplomatic efforts first. I wish I had better news, Lisa said. But there's something else you should see. She handed him the tablet. On the screen was a satellite image of Mars, where Earth had established a small research outpost 3 years earlier. The image showed several large objects in orbit around the red planet. When was this taken? Barnes asked, his voice tight. 2 hours ago. We've lost all contact with the Mars outpost. Barnes set the tablet down and returned to the window. So, it begins. The next day, a message reached Earth. Unlike the previous alien communication, this one was in clear English, though the accent was strange and the grammar imperfect. The message played on screens around the world. The same four-eyed being appeared, but now it spoke words humans could understand. People of Earth. I am Commander Vex of the Xandarian Empire. Our empire spans 1,000 worlds across 3 galaxies. We have existed for 10,000 years. You are trespassing in space that belongs to us. Your presence was not expected for 500 more years. This disrupts the Great Plan. Commander Vex paused, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Emperor Zaxivor offers you mercy. Surrender your world and colonies. Give us 100,000 of your people each year as tribute. In return, you may live. You have 30 Earth days to decide. If you refuse, we will destroy your civilization. The message ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. In the hours that followed, panic spread. Some people fled to the countryside, believing cities would be the first targets. Others joined in protests demanding immediate surrender to save lives. Religious groups proclaimed the end times had arrived. 3 days after the message, Admiral Barnes called an emergency meeting with Earth's top military and scientific minds. The group gathered in an underground bunker, safe from prying eyes and possible alien surveillance. We've analyzed everything we know about Xandarian technology, Barnes began. Their weapons are powerful, but their ships have weaknesses. The Defiance damaged one with standard defensive lasers. Dr. Alan Russell, head of Advanced Weapons Research, spoke next. We think their ships rely heavily on shields but have relatively fragile hulls. Their designs haven't changed much in centuries. Based on comparing our encounter with ancient space debris, we've found that matches their technology. You're suggesting they've become stagnant, said General Paul Wright. Exactly. Russell nodded. They've been the dominant species for so long they haven't needed to innovate. Lisa Carter looked troubled. Even if that's true, we're still outnumbered and outgunned. They have 1,000 worlds. We have 1 planet and a handful of small colonies. Numbers aren't everything, Barnes said. Throughout history, smaller forces have defeated larger ones through superior tactics and unexpected strategies. Barnes touched a control and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed the design for a new kind of ship, unlike anything Earth had built before. This is the Vanguard, he said. We've been designing it in secret since the Defiance returned. It incorporates everything we've learned about Xandarian technology, plus some innovations of our own. The gathered leaders studied the hologram with growing interest. What makes it special? Asked the president, who had been listening quietly until now. Dr. Russell stepped forward. 3 key technologies. First, a quantum displacement shield that should make us nearly invisible to their sensors. Second, a gravitational weapon system that can literally tear their ships apart at the atomic level. And third, he paused, looking uncomfortable. Go on, Barnes encouraged. The neural interface, Russell continued. The ship's systems are too complex for traditional controls. It requires a human pilot to interface directly with the ship's computer, becoming essentially one with the vessel. Is that safe? Lisa asked. Russell looked away. The neural load is significant. We've been testing with volunteers. The results have been promising, but we haven't maintained a connection for more than a few minutes. How long until the ship is ready? The president asked. The physical construction is nearly complete, Barnes replied. The real question is finding a pilot who can handle the neural interface for an extended period. As if on cue, the door opened and a young man entered. Captain Ryan Clark was 32 years old with dark hair and the focused expression of someone who had seen combat. "Mr. President, Admiral." Clark nodded to each person in turn. "I understand you need a pilot." Barnes studied him. "Captain, Clark has shown the highest compatibility with the neural interface in our tests. His mind seems uniquely suited to process the massive data flow." "And you're volunteering?" the President asked directly. Clark stood straight. "Yes, sir. I've seen the message from the Xandarians. I've reviewed the reports from Mars. They've already started experimenting on the colonists there, treating humans like lab rats. Someone needs to show them we won't surrender without a fight." The room fell silent as everyone considered what was at stake. Finally, the President spoke. "How long will it take to get the Vanguard ready for launch?" 3 weeks, Barnes replied. "Maybe less if we push the construction teams around the clock." "The Xandarians gave us 30 days, the President said. Let's use that time wisely." As the meeting ended, no one noticed the small red light blinking on one of the communication panels in the corner of the room. Far above Earth, in a cloaked ship, a Xandarian spy listened with growing concern. The humans were more resourceful than expected. The report to Emperor Zaxvor would need to be updated. The countdown to confrontation had begun. The hidden shipyard orbiting Earth's moon buzzed with activity. Workers in spacesuits moved across the gleaming hull of the Vanguard, making final adjustments. Inside the massive ship, engineers ran system checks while scientists calibrated delicate equipment. Everyone worked with urgent purpose. Earth had only 10 days left before the Xandarian deadline. Captain Ryan Clark floated in a clear chamber at the heart of the ship. The neural interface room was unlike any cockpit ever built. There were no controls, no screens, no buttons. Instead, thin cables hung from the ceiling, waiting to connect to the special suit Clark would wear. Dr. Alan Russell entered the chamber, pushing himself along a handrail. "Ready for another test?" he asked. Clark nodded. He had completed 12 short connections with the ship over the past 2 weeks. Each time, the experience had been both amazing and terrifying. Russell helped Clark into the neural suit, a tight-fitting garment covered with thousands of small sensors that would read his brain signals and muscle movements. Once Clark was fully dressed, Russell connected the hanging cables to ports along the suit's spine. "We're going to try for 8 minutes today," Russell said. "Remember, if it gets too overwhelming, think the shutdown command 3 times. "I remember," Clark said. He closed his eyes and took several deep breaths. "Start the link." Russell tapped commands into his tablet. The cables connecting Clark to the ship glowed with soft blue light. Clark gasped as the connection formed. Suddenly, he wasn't just Ryan Clark anymore. He was the Vanguard. He could feel every part of the massive ship as if it were his own body. The engines were his muscles. The sensors were his eyes and ears, showing him space in all directions at once. The weapons were his hands, ready to strike. The sensation was overwhelming. Human brains weren't designed to process so much information. Most test pilots had blacked out in seconds, but Clark's mind adapted differently. Instead of fighting the flood of data, he let it flow through him, becoming one with the ship. "How are you feeling?" Russell's voice seemed to come from both inside and outside Clark's head. "It's incredible," Clark replied, his real voice barely working while his mind communicated directly with the ship's systems. "I can see everything. I can feel the moon's gravity pulling on us. I can sense the small meteoroids passing by." Russell checked his readings. "Your brain activity is stable. Heart rate elevated but within acceptable limits. Let's try some basics. Movement." Clark didn't need to be told how. He simply thought about moving, and the Vanguard responded. The massive ship gently turned away from the moon, its engines firing with perfect precision. "Excellent," Russell exclaimed. "Now let's—" An alarm blared through the shipyard. Red emergency lights flashed. Admiral Barnes's voice came through the communication system. "All personnel, battle stations. Xandarian scout ships have entered lunar orbit. They've found us." Russell looked panicked. "We need to disconnect. The Vanguard isn't ready for combat." But Clark was already accessing the ship's external cameras. Three sleek alien vessels were approaching the shipyard, weapons charging. The facility's defenses were activating, but they wouldn't be enough against even these small Xandarian ships. "No time," Clark said, his voice strangely calm. "Everyone evacuate the shipyard. Get to the emergency shuttles." Russell hesitated. "What are you saying?" "We can't." "I'm taking the Vanguard out," Clark interrupted. "Now disconnect from the docking clamps and get clear." Through the ship's systems, Clark sent commands to the shipyard. Warning sirens blared, telling all personnel to evacuate. The docking clamps began to retract. "This is insane," Russell protested. "We haven't tested the weapon systems yet. The shield generators aren't fully calibrated. You're not ready for an extended neural connection." Clark fixed his gaze on Russell. "If those scouts report back to the Xandarian fleet, they'll know we're building a weapon. They'll attack immediately instead of waiting for their deadline. This is our only chance." Russell saw the determination in Clark's eyes and knew he couldn't stop him. "The recommended maximum connection time is 10 minutes. After that, the neural load could cause permanent brain damage or death." "I understand," Clark said. "Now go." Russell reluctantly pushed himself toward the exit. At the door, he looked back. "Good luck, Captain." As Russell evacuated with the rest of the crew, Clark fully embraced his connection with the Vanguard. The ship hummed with power as it disconnected from the last docking clamp. The main engines ignited, pushing the vessel away from the shipyard. Just as the first Xandarian scout opened fire, energy bolts struck the shipyard, destroying empty sections where the Vanguard had been moments before. The scouts immediately changed course, pursuing the human vessel. Clark felt a surge of confidence as the ship responded to his thoughts. He pushed the engines harder, accelerating away from the moon. The Xandarian scouts followed, firing repeatedly. Most shots missed as Clark instinctively maneuvered the Vanguard in ways no conventional pilot could achieve. One energy bolt struck the ship's rear section. Clark felt it like a burn on his own skin. Damage reports flowed directly into his mind. "Shields. At 60%, he muttered, though no one was there to hear him. "Let's see what these weapons can really do." Clark focused his thoughts on the Vanguard's main weapon system, the gravitational disruptors. In theory, they could create localized distortions in space-time that would tear enemy ships apart, but they had never been tested outside simulations. The Vanguard turned sharply, facing its pursuers. The lead Xandarian scout fired again, its energy bolt glancing off the ship's shields. Clark activated the gravitational weapons. Energy coursed through the ship's specialized emitters. The invisible wave of distorted space-time shot toward the lead scout. The effect was immediate and shocking. The Xandarian vessel seemed to compress and stretch simultaneously. Its hull crumpled, like paper, then tore apart as if pulled in a dozen different directions. In seconds, the scout ship was reduced to scattered debris. The other two scouts immediately broke off their attack, turning to flee. "Oh no, you don't," Clark thought. The Vanguard surged forward with impossible speed, overtaking one of the retreating scouts. Another gravitational pulse reduced it to fragments. The third scout accelerated, preparing to jump to faster than light speed. Clark knew he couldn't let it escape to report what it had seen. He pushed the Vanguard's engines beyond their tested limits, ignoring the warning signals flashing through his mind. Just as the scout began to disappear into hyperspace, the Vanguard fired one last gravitational pulse. The distortion caught the scout's engines, causing a catastrophic failure. The Xandarian ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light and energy. As silence returned to lunar space, Clark finally felt the strain of the neural connection. His head pounded with pain. Blood trickled from his nose. The edges of his vision grew dark. Neural connection time, 11 minutes, 27 seconds. The ship's computer reported dispassionately. Clark knew he needed to disconnect before permanent damage occurred. But as he prepared to end the link, the Vanguard's long-range sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. A massive fleet had just appeared at the edge of the solar system. The Xandarians had arrived early, and there were hundreds of ships. Admiral Barnes stood in Earth's main defense control center, surrounded by screens showing the approaching Xandarian fleet. Hundreds of alien ships moved slowly but steadily toward Earth, their formation perfect and threatening. "They're ignoring our messages," said Lisa Carter, who had been trying to open communication channels for the past hour. They know we detected them and they don't care. Barnes nodded grimly. They've decided not to wait for their own deadline. The scout ships must have sent some kind of emergency signal before they were destroyed. The room fell quiet as everyone realized what was happening. The Xandarian Empire, with its technology developed over thousands of years, had come to conquer Earth. Humanity's defenses, though impressive for a young spacefaring species, were no match for such overwhelming numbers. "Where is the Vanguard?" Barnes asked, breaking the silence. A young officer at the sensor station replied, "Still near lunar orbit, sir. Captain Clark hasn't responded to communications for the past 30 minutes. Dr. Russell, who had returned to Earth on an emergency shuttle, stepped forward. "He's been connected to the neural interface for too long. If he doesn't disconnect soon, the damage will be permanent, if it isn't already." Barnes looked at the main screen, which now showed the Vanguard floating motionless near the moon. Their one hope, their secret weapon, appeared dead in space. "Can we remotely disconnect him?" Barnes asked. Russell shook his head. "Not without risking brain damage. The disconnection process needs to be gradual." Inside the Vanguard, Captain Ryan Clark floated in a strange state between consciousness and something else. His mind had expanded beyond normal human limits through his connection with the ship. The pain had been unbearable at first, but now he felt nothing. Blood floated in small droplets around his face, leaking from his nose and ears. Through the ship's sensors, he watched the Xandarian fleet approach. He knew Earth's defenses couldn't stop them. He also knew he should disconnect from the neural interface, but something held him back, not just duty or courage, but curiosity. The ship was changing him, showing him things about space, time, and reality that no human had ever seen. Then, among the thousands of data points flowing through his consciousness, Clark noticed something odd about the Xandarian ships. Their formation, while visually perfect, had a flaw. A pattern that repeated every 7 ships revealed a weakness, a gap in their defensive coverage that appeared for just 3.2 seconds during each formation rotation. No human eye could have seen this. No computer would have recognized the pattern without being specifically programmed to look for it. But Clark, his mind enhanced by the neural connection, saw it instantly. With new determination, he pushed the ship forward. The Vanguard's engines flared to life, pushing it away from lunar orbit toward the approaching armada. In the defense center on Earth, alarms sounded as the Vanguard began to move. "He's heading straight for the Xandarian fleet," exclaimed the sensor officer. "At maximum speed." Barnes couldn't believe what he was seeing. Is he insane? One ship against hundreds? Dr. Russell stared at the screen, his expression mixed with horror and wonder. The neural interface must have affected his judgment, or maybe he's seeing something we don't. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of the Xandarian flagship Dominion. As leader of the invasion force, he had already planned how he would divide Earth's resources among his officers after the conquest. "Supreme Commander," called a Xandarian officer, "a single human vessel is approaching our fleet." Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. "One ship? They're even more primitive than we thought. Put it on the main screen." The image showed the Vanguard accelerating toward them. Unlike other human ships they had encountered, this one had an unusual design, sleeker, more advanced. "Scans show unusual energy readings," reported another officer. "This may be a new type of vessel." Krell dismissed the concern with a wave of his four-fingered hand. "It doesn't matter. No single ship can stand against the might of our fleet. Prepare to destroy it as an example to the humans." The Xandarian fleet continued its advance, hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination. 20 smaller vessels broke formation, moving to intercept the Vanguard. Inside the neural chamber, Clark felt no fear. His consciousness had expanded beyond normal human emotions. He saw the intercepting ships and calculated exactly when to make his move. The Vanguard accelerated to its maximum speed, then suddenly cut its main engines. Using only maneuvering thrusters, it slipped into the gap in the Xandarian formation that Clark had identified, a space that existed for mere seconds as the ships rotated in their defensive pattern. The Xandarian interceptors fired, but their shots passed through empty space where the Vanguard should have been. Before they could recalculate, Clark had pushed the ship deep into the heart of the main fleet. "Impossible," shouted Commander Krell as he watched the human ship appear suddenly, near the center of his formation. No pilot could navigate through our defensive screen. But Clark wasn't just a pilot anymore. He was the ship itself, with reflexes and perception beyond normal human limits. The Vanguard fired its gravitational weapons at point-blank range. 5 Xandarian cruisers crumpled and tore apart instantly. The nearby ships broke formation, trying to target the human vessel that had appeared in their midst. The Vanguard moved with impossible speed and precision, dodging energy blasts while firing its weapons with perfect accuracy. Each gravitational pulse destroyed another alien ship. The perfect Xandarian formation dissolved into chaos as ships crashed into each other, trying to escape the unexpected threat. On Earth, the Defense Center watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded on their screens. One human ship was tearing through the alien armada like a shark among fish. "This shouldn't be possible," whispered Dr. Russell. "The neural interface is allowing him to control the ship with a level of precision we never imagined." Barnes nodded slowly. "But at what cost? How long can he maintain the connection?" The battle continued for 27 minutes. The Vanguard danced between Xandarian ships, appearing where they least expected, striking and vanishing before they could respond. Ship after ship fell to the gravitational weapons. Commander Krell watched in growing horror as a third of his fleet was destroyed by a single human vessel. Nothing in 10,000 years of Xandarian military history had prepared him for this. "Retreat," he finally ordered, his voice shaking. "All ships, retreat immediately." The remaining Xandarian vessels turned away from Earth, preparing to jump to faster than light speed. As they fled, the Vanguard finally stopped its attack, hovering motionless among the scattered debris of destroyed alien ships. In the neural chamber, Captain Ryan Clark's eyes slowly closed as consciousness finally slipped away. His last thought, transmitted through the ship's communication system to Earth, was simple but profound. "They'll be back. But now they know we can fight." 3 weeks had passed since the battle near Earth. The Vanguard had been towed back to the lunar shipyard, its systems partially damaged but repairable. Captain Ryan Clark lay in a special medical facility on Earth, surrounded by machines monitoring his brain activity. He hadn't woken since being disconnected from the neural interface. Dr. Nicole Wright checked his vital signs for the 10th time that day. As the medical specialist assigned to Clark's case, she had barely left his side in the past weeks. "Any change?" asked Dr. Russell, who visited daily. Nicole shook her head. "His brain is still extremely active, but in patterns I've never seen before. It's as if he's still processing the information from his connection with the ship." Russell looked troubled. "He was linked for over 90 minutes. That's 9 times longer than what we considered the safe maximum." "But he saved Earth," Nicole reminded him. "Everyone says he's a hero." Before Russell could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the facility. Moments later, Admiral Barnes rushed into the room. "We've detected a ship entering Earth orbit," he said, his face tense. "It's Xandarian, but different from their military vessels, smaller with minimal weapons." "They're back already?" Russell asked, surprised. "We expected them to regroup for months at least." Barnes shook his head. "This isn't an attack. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, requesting permission to land. They say they've come to talk." 2 hours later, Earth's leaders gathered in the United Nations headquarters in New York. Security was unprecedented. Soldiers lined every wall and defense systems were on high alert worldwide. A single Xandarian entered the chamber. Unlike Commander Vex or the warriors they had encountered before, this one wore elaborate robes with intricate designs. The 4 eyes were the same, but the skin was paler, almost translucent. "I am Grand Ambassador Arian of the Xandarian Empire," the alien announced, its voice translated through a device at its chest. "I bring a message from Emperor Zaxvor himself." The room fell silent as everyone waited. For 10,000 years, the Xandarian Empire has conquered all who stood before us. Arian continued. Never in our history has a single ship defeated a fleet. Never has a primitive species shown such unexpected capabilities. The ambassador paused, 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Emperor Zaxvor recognizes the unique potential of humanity. Therefore, he extends an offer. Earth will not be conquered. Instead, you are invited to join the Galactic Council as equals. Murmurs of surprise filled the room. Admiral Barnes stood up from his seat near the front. Why should we trust you? He asked directly. You attacked us without provocation. You experimented on our people on Mars. Arian's translator produced a sound that might have been a sigh. Those actions were errors based on incomplete understanding. The Empire has ruled for so long that we forgot what it was like to meet true equals. Equals? Lisa Carter spoke up from her position beside the president. A week ago, you called us primitives. A miscalculation, Arian replied. Your technology developed along different paths than ours. While we mastered space travel earlier, you have created innovations we never considered. The neural interface your warrior used with your ship. Our scientists call it impossible, yet we witnessed the results. The President of the United States leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? An alliance, Arian said simply. Exchange of knowledge, trade, cultural sharing, and eventually, your seat on the Galactic Council, which governs relations between spacefaring civilizations. Barnes looked skeptical. This sudden change of heart seems convenient. What aren't you telling us? The ambassador was silent for a moment, then spoke more quietly. There are things beyond the edge of known space, things that even the Xandarian Empire fears. For millennia we have stood as a bulwark against these entities, but we grow old as a civilization, complacent. The encounter with your ship showed us this truth. You need us, Barnes realized. The universe needs fresh eyes and new approaches, Arian corrected. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. Together we might face what comes from the darkness between galaxies. As Earth's leaders discussed, the unexpected offer, Nicole Wright sat beside Ryan Clark's hospital bed reading to him from his favorite book. She had been told that familiar stimuli might help bring him back to consciousness. Suddenly, Clark's fingers twitched. His eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids. Ryan? Nicole said, putting down the book. Can you hear me? Clark's eyes opened, slowly, struggling to focus. Nicole? He whispered, his voice rough from weeks of disuse. Yes, she exclaimed, pressing the call button for other medical staff. You're awake. How do you feel? Clark looked around the room, seeming confused. I saw so much. The ship showed me things about space and time that I can't explain. Nicole squeezed his hand. You saved Earth, Ryan. The Xandarians retreated. You destroyed a third of their fleet single-handedly. Not me, he corrected weakly. The Vanguard, we did it together. As medical staff rushed into the room, Clark's gaze turned toward the window where stars were just becoming visible in the evening sky. They're coming, he said suddenly, his voice clearer and stronger. Who's coming? Nicole asked, concerned by the intensity in his eyes. The ones the Xandarians fear. I saw them while connected to the ship. Entities from beyond known space, ancient, patient. And they've noticed us now. Before Nicole could ask more questions, the medical team moved her aside to examine Clark. But his words stayed with her, a chill running down her spine despite the warm room. A week later, Earth's leaders signed the first treaty with the Xandarian Empire. The public celebration was massive. Humanity had stood its ground against a vastly superior force and earned respect rather than conquest. But in a quiet room at Earth's new joint Human-Xandarian Defense Headquarters, Admiral Barnes, Lisa Carter, and the newly recovered Captain Clark met with Grand Ambassador Arian to discuss more serious matters. Tell us everything you know about these entities from beyond known space, Barnes said. Arian's 4 eyes blinked slowly. We call them the Void Collective. They exist partially outside normal spacetime. For 50,000 years they have tested the boundaries of our empire, looking for weaknesses. And now they've noticed Earth, Clark added. He still looked pale, but his mind was sharp. The medical team had found permanent changes in his brain from the neural connection, enhanced processing speed, improved pattern recognition, and occasional glimpses of insights that seemed almost precognitive. Yes, Arian agreed. Your battle with our fleet was like a beacon. The Void Collective senses conflict and power. Lisa Carter studied the star charts on the table between them. How long do we have to prepare? Perhaps a year, Arian said. Perhaps less. Clark looked at Barnes. The Vanguard is nearly repaired, and I'm ready to connect with it again. Barnes frowned. The doctors advised against it. The changes to your brain are already significant. But necessary, Clark insisted. What I saw through the ship's sensors, the patterns I recognized, will need that advantage against what's coming. As the group continued planning Earth's defenses, ordinary people around the world went about their lives, unaware of the greater threat looming beyond the stars. They celebrated humanity's new place in the galactic community, marveled at the Xandarian visitors, and told stories about the single warship that had made an empire tremble. But Captain Ryan Clark looked to the stars each night, knowing that humanity's first great test had been merely the beginning. The true challenge waited in the darkness between galaxies, patient and ancient and hungry, and when it came, humanity would need to be ready.